like in Colorado, for instance, we still have people migrating to the state, and that of course drives up demand. And then there's a lot going on there with the homeless situation and everything. And one of my future funds is going to be something around that. With there's a lack of beds for behavioral health, and there's a lack of affordable supportive housing.
Welcome back to another episode of the Estate of Wealth for your weekly dose of market updates and expert insights. I'm Barney Villa, and alongside me, as always, is Aaron Levitt. And today on the show, we have Mike Tressler. Thanks for coming on, Mike. Why don't you tell the audience a little about who you are, what you do, and where you're from?
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. Happy to be invited. Good to get to chat with you guys. Finally, we've been trying for a little bit. I am starting a real estate fund right now. That's kind of where my focus is. It's going to be a community impact property fund focused on triple net leases. I want to raise about $10 million, and if that'll end up being 5 or 6 properties. So that's in the works. That's just getting ready to take off. It'll be things that impact the community, like senior living, early childhood education facilities, medical office buildings, things like that. So that's the focus now. Long background in real estate, everything from eminent domain for state highways, consulting for government agencies. I lived in Australia for 5 years, and I worked for, you would know Subaru, but I actually worked for their parent company. Subaru Australia's parent company is Inchcape out of Scotland. And
is that the one that makes the Apache helicopters?
No. No, that's not the one. Inchcape is an old from the 1700s. I think it was a tea company that shipped tea around the world. They had a bunch of ships, and they kind of went from shipping. They still do shipping, and then they got into the automotive business. And so Inchcape, like in Guam and in Australia is one, and a few others where some of these smaller companies don't have a distribution of their own, like Volkswagen in Australia. We distributed Volkswagens. Subaru, they own that whole supply chain, things like that. That was really interesting, and what I did was build their headquarters there, some large dealerships, did a few other warranty projects and things. So that was in the early 2000s. I did that, and I worked my way back, met my current wife, who I have known since she was 12 and I was 13. We went to high school together and everything.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
She was here in Fort Collins, nice. Colorado. Yeah. And I just worked my way back here and have a day job with Elevations Credit Union as their vice president of corporate real estate. So I handle their whole portfolio of corporate-owned properties and ATMs and property management, security, and all that stuff. So I've got a full plate, but I like it that way. So here we are.
Nice. And we were just chatting about this, but I just found out that you were in the Air Force. So I always want to say thank you for your service. We've been having quite a slew of these military men and women on here, and I love it. I think getting out of the military is a challenging thing to do for some people, but I love to see people make that transition into real estate and start giving back to the community. Our last guest, Stacy, when she came on, she was a nurse, and she's kind of still in that sector, helping nurses almost retire and move into some more passive income through real estate. So I just love to hear that. Love to point that out as well. So again, thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, that was interesting. My transition from the service, I'll give you a real quick on that. I was at Fort Meade, Maryland, at station at NSA, and I was working there, and I had about 8 months to go, and I want to buy a house. And so I started calling around on houses, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. And just my nature, I was like, I have to know everything. So I got my license. Mm-hmm. And then I called, Linda Nash was her name, and she worked at Prudential Real Estate. And I was like, hey, I just got my license. She said, well, there's an empty seat next to me if you want to try it part-time till you get out. So I sold real estate in the late afternoons and evenings for a while. And I made $8,000 that first year. And based on that success, I went full-time.
What year was that?
Yeah.
What year was that?
It wasn't enough back then. That was 92.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So 8,000 went a lot farther back then than in today in 2024. So
fair. I just jumped in both feet, But the next year, she was the number one agent, and I was number two in the office. So
awesome. No, that's really
That's
cool.
great. Yeah, that's a great start to get your feet in the door. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was how it all started for the, so that was 92 was my first real estate kind of introduction back then.
Mm-hmm. And I love that you're right in our backyard in Fort Collins too. I mean, I know the audience knows this, but I'm in Boulder and Aaron's in Aurora. But we've been trying to connect with Mike for quite some time now. We keep inviting him down to the barbecues, but he hasn't quite had time to make it yet. Maybe the next one in August. We're super excited to meet you in person.
Yeah, give me the date and I'll make sure that happens.
All right, let's jump into some of these quirky questions here. I'm curious about this first one. The first one's definitely my favorite. I love asking all our guests this question. But if you could live in any fictional home from a movie or TV show, which one would it be and why?
And I just saw these questions just minutes ago. And so the first one that popped into my head, we'll go with that. I watched the whole series of Modern Family, Jay Pritchett's Closet. Did you ever watch Modern Family with Sofia Vergara? And
it's been a minute. Show. I know what it is. Yeah.
He had a great house.
Yeah.
I have a pool table downstairs, and I want to get the pool table light that he had in that house. That's been on my list for a while.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll go with that.
Love it.
Okay, great. Yeah. We haven't had somebody, structure their home around the entertainment room, but I love that. I grew up with a air hockey table, so I can still hear the clink in the background. Clink. That would happen a lot. So that's very cool.
Nice. All right. Question number 2. Imagine you're a real estate superhero, and you already are. I always point this out. Every guest that comes in our show is amazing at real estate. But what would your superpower be, and how would you use it to close deals?
Man, that's a good one. Because every situation, I kind of two pop in my head. Either just knowing the future value, but being able to wave the magic wand and have the 0% interest would really kind of make just about every deal work.
That is a powerful wand to wave.
I'm gonna go
free money. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how we haven't gotten that answer yet. That's great.
Yeah. No, that's a really good one. I love that. All right. Question number 3. If you had to describe your investing style in terms of a movie genre, comedy, drama, action, etc., what would it be and why?
Oh my. Okay. I'm gonna go. I got kind of a strategy going here, I think, with just picking my favorite stuff and then applying it to real estate.
Love it. Yeah.
I would go with Westerns. The Outlaw Josie Wales is my favorite movie, and Tombstone's right behind it. Yeah. Actually, I wrote a Western book called Mac Hammaker, Colorado Bound, and it's on Amazon, although my publisher is not printing at the moment. I have to find out why.
Okay.
But I like Westerns, and the reason is because I tend to do this. It's like you think of, Clint Eastwood in the movie, comes into town, he's the lone gunman taking care of business. And I always try to do that for some reason. I don't know why, but in The Outlaw Josie Wales, if you've seen that, he works his way to Texas, and as he goes along, he picks up various companions along the way that help him out. And that's what's happened to me over time. I realized, I can't do it all. I need a team, like you guys.
Yeah,
absolutely. Call and ask a question,
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the Western standpoint as well, because it's almost like the hero's story, if you will.
It totally is. Yeah. That whole hero's arc is always, always entertaining. It's in so many movies.
That is an excellent answer. I don't think we've gotten that one yet.
We haven't.
Out of all the people we've asked, that no one said Western. That's a good one. I love that.
Which you think somebody would have by now, because we are in a state with a very similar scenery to a lot of those movies.
True.
I feel like a lot of them are filmed here in Colorado or Arizona, and so some of our natural beauty in this state is some of the background for those movies.
Oh, it's fantastic! I just look out the window. I've got a great view of the mountains when it's not smoky and on fire.
Yeah. It's terrible, but also synchronistic. The last one we filmed was the fires in Boulder, and I was seeing even more smoke out our window a couple weeks ago when we filmed that one. But man, this summer's been a little brutal. They're still raging, and thanks to all those firefighters out there. But I hope they get it out soon.
Yeah,
I do too. We're up to 5,000 acres on this one already. Nothing compared to what's happening in California right now, but let's just stop before we get there.
Right.
My voice is a little raspy because the smoke's getting to me a little bit.
Yep. I woke up smelling it was like a campfire out there this morning, and it was I was like, ugh. I can see it from my house as well too. So it's tough. It's a tough situation for Colorado, but hopefully they get it out soon. All right, question number 4. Share a quirky or unexpected item you've come across during a property inspection or walkthrough.
Okay, this one's going to take a minute. I've come across a lot of crazy things. I thought were dead, but they were just asleep. Things, all kinds of things. But there was a point in time, like I mentioned, I did some consulting work, and I was working for a company called Oracle and Associates. They do eminent domain type, runway expansions, things like that. I was project manager for them for a few years. And I was at the Cleveland airport. They wanted to expand the runway, or I think they were going to add a runway because they only had one. And so it was going through a self-storage facility. And so we had to just meet all these people to open up your self-storage facility, and we'll pay you to move your stuff and so on. So that was my job. So another guy, Frank Stromowski was his name. He was the other agent kind of helping with this, and we were meeting people. And we're just sitting there, and we're just waiting for the next person. And this Volkswagen Bug just goes like in between these self-storage units, and it has a big cylinder on top, this big silver cylinder.
Whoa!
And we're like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
I don't know. So we kind of look up, and it's gone. There's nothing there. When I saw it, did you see it? Yeah, we saw it. And so we're waiting, and then a couple hours later, goes back out.
Whoa!
It's a mystery for like a whole day, and then right at the end of the day, it was a Tuesday. I remember very well. It was a Tuesday, and there was, we saw it coming. We could hear it, and so we were running up there, and it turns into one of these storage units, one of the big ones. And so we ran, hey, what is this? And there are these pretty girls in there and good-looking guys, and it was the introduction of Red Bull in the United States, and it was a big Red Bull on top. And so we had no idea what that was, and so we scored a couple cases of Red Bull to take back to the office. And then it was like, we worked all night. We got all of our paperwork.
It gave you wings, right? That's what happened.
Wings. We didn't even, we horns, or we didn't know.
Now, I'm assuming this is the original old school Volkswagen, right? The old Bug.
It was when the new Bug had just come out.
The new iteration, yeah. You always You always hear the stories of the old school, the original Volkswagen Bug. You always hear the stories of people being able to, I guess, flip the cars over or pick them up with one or two people. They were apparently very light.
I had one when I was at Defense Language Institute in California. I bought a 62 Bug, and it had a 68 van engine in it. So it was a 1600. It was pretty fast and all.
Yeah.
That thing was so light though, because my starter went out, and I could just put one leg out and push it like a skateboard and pop in and pop the clutch and keep going. And I drove all the way to Texas that way. I went to San Antonio, Texas. I got transferred, and it went out on the way. And I'm like, oh, whatever.
Yeah,
that's funny. So am I the one that's going to have to say the Flintstones joke now? Okay.
Oh,
all right.
Yeah. Very similar.
Yep. Well, I just laughed because Barney and Barney Rubble, but I thought somebody would say it because yesterday I definitely got caught with the Barney the Purple Dinosaur because I had a purple name tag on. Somebody called me out, and I'm like, oh yeah, I haven't been told that since like 5th grade. But anyways.
It was a friendly manner.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Yes.
You may not be old enough. There was a Life cereal commercial with, he likes it. Hey, Mikey. Yeah, so I can relate to that.
I got it. Okay, so you were the Mikey for a bit.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Oh, that's funny. Great story. Wow, we've not had that one. We've had some very quirky things people find, but that was a good one. I like that. The
launch of Red Bull, and you think about it now, there's so many different energy drinks. Even living in Colorado, all these natural energy drinks that are yerba mate and all these other things. It's wild to see that you saw the first footsteps of Red Bull in the country.
That's right.
Love that. That's fun. Yeah. All right. Question number 5. And I love this one. If real estate investing were a sport, which it kind of is, it's very competitive, what would your team's mascot be and why?
All right. I'm going to continue with my strategy. My favorite football team is the Dolphins.
Okay.
I'm going to go with the Dolphins. I'm going to say they're very intelligent, and they can change directions with the current on a, just whichever way the current's going, they can easily change direction. So
Totally. And they're friendly.
And they're friendly.
Love it. No, that's great. That's great. No, that's an excellent answer. Highly intelligent species. No, that's an excellent answer. All right. Done with the questions. Let's move on to some interesting news articles. Very interested in. It says Denver's commercial real estate pros and cons, talk bright spots and challenges of the markets. So since we're all in the commercial sector, whether it's through office buildings or multifamily, we probably have a lot to say on this. But Mike, I'll let you kick it off. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah. The interesting thing is you always see commercial real estate, a lot of foreclosures come, whatever, but commercial real estate is so broad. I mean, is it an office building, a multifamily? Is it a marina? Is it an RV park? Those are all commercial, your car wash. So there's just so many segments, and office is what's dragging things down because of COVID and the shift to working from home. I mean, I've experienced it in some of my roles. So there's a shift going on there, but some of the sectors like self-storage, people were working at home, they're storing things. That's like still doing great. RV parks, hot investment sector because everybody started RVing. As we know, living in Colorado, all of a sudden, COVID, you can't do anything. Everybody bought an RV, and the prices shot up and everything else. So it's just interesting that you always see commercial real estate as if it's one thing, and it's just not. That's my first reaction to that.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. I do think that happens a lot. I mean, even just generally speaking, if I tell people I'm an agent or I'm an investor, they go, how's the market? And I have to differentiate, and I have to say, are we talking residential or are we talking commercial? And then you have to get into the nuances and the details of it, because there is no one blanket statement that's going to be like, oh, the market's great, or oh, the market's bad.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that I can appreciate about this article is that it kind of lays out the entire field as to what creates the perfect storm and adds to this. They go on to say that, Denver is one of the top 5 or 10 worst cities for homelessness right now, which is a really sad truth that, all of us have probably experienced the different influx of these homeless camps as they come into the city. So, we've seen it, right? But, that along adds to drug crime and property crime and, of course, violent crime that seems to be upticking as well. But, it kind of goes to the affordability crisis and how that plays into the fact that, a lot of our firefighters, a lot of our teachers here are, needing to dedicate more than 30% of their income towards rent. That along with some of these apartment buildings kind of trading hands or, defaulting on their loans, it's just created this perfect storm that is basically, adding to the stressors of this market.
Yeah, you raise a lot of good points there. I mean, like in Colorado, for instance, we still have people migrating to the state, and that, of course, drives up demand. And then there's a lot going on there with the homeless situation and everything. And one of my future funds is going to be something around that. With there's a lack of beds for behavioral health, and there's a lack of affordable supportive housing. Up here in Fort Collins, there are a couple of buildings that were developed kind of public-private partnership kind of thing that are supportive housing. So it's people at risk of homelessness, or maybe they were, or they have a mental health issue. And then these buildings, a couple are near my house, are beautiful, have an apartment, but they also have nurses and pharmacy and things like that available to the tenants, and it really seems to be successful. And a lot of people get worried, I don't want that in my neighborhood. They're beautiful buildings, and I don't see any issues around them at all, and everything's well supervised and super clean. There's a big need for things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I've spent time in Portland. I have family out there, and I've actually gone to visit some of those buildings, from the outside. And you're right. They really do add to the community and the neighborhood. And it's so interesting to see like how they're tackling this issue.
Yeah, I drive by, open land, and I'm like, I wonder if I could put 35 tiny houses there with a supportive office and what would that look like? And could I get a tax break for it and get investors that want to be philanthropic and still, kind of have a win-win all the way around? So
Yeah.
it's things that go through my head when I'm driving down I-25.
Yeah, definitely. No, I just like articles that point out that, there's a lot of things that play that kind of add to the bigger issues here. Like, this is not an easy hurdle to get over. There's a lot of things that are at play.
Yeah. We're we're lucky in many ways in Colorado that we have solid job market and growth. That keeps driving up prices though, because the demand, and of course the builders were building to catch up with all that demand when the money was cheap, and a lot of that came on the market already. So then it kind of stopped rents, increasing 5% per year, which is great. But then again, it's going to drive up the rents again, and then they're going to start
Right.
building more, and that supply will come in. It's a kind of a vicious cycle at the moment, just because we still have now some states it's going to be the opposite. They have people exodus, and they're multifamily, for instance, is going to drop rents considerably. So yeah,
I think the interesting thing that I want to point out is, like, Denver has always felt like a smaller city. I think a lot of people visit Denver and they think it's this big city, but at least with the circles that we run with, if you're in the art space, everybody who's in the art space. If you're in the real estate space, everybody in the real estate space. So it feels like a smaller community here, but it's crazy to think that this article is suggesting that we are tied for the single highest commercial vacancy rate with San Francisco. And you've heard all of these, mass exodus articles about San Francisco, and it's just hard to really wrap your head around Denver being tied right there with it.
Yeah, I looked at a couple of like office conversions to real estate. It's really hard. You have some challenges with just the cost of converting. An office building is post-tension construction with, you don't want to penetrate the floor too many times, and it's a central column of bathrooms, and typically. So then you have to add kitchens, bathrooms, everything, and it's a lot of, sometimes structurally you just can't do it, and it's costly. So some of the better ones would be like a Homewood Suites kind of thing, where it's a long-term stay hotel situation where you could combine 2 suites and make 1 bathroom, the kitchen, and that would work out a little bit better, but just not that common. And plus the zoning is another thing, and parking is another.
Yeah, and I think this is a great segue into our next article, which is entitled "Colorado Looking to Incentivize Turning Empty Office Buildings into Housing."
Yeah, Mike, you were kind of hitting on some of those points now, but I'd love to hear a little bit more of your insight. What we understand is it's very hard to add some of those utilities into the building, whether it's plumbing or electric or kind of converting that space.
Yeah, plumbing, for instance, they just might not have the feed into the building. You have to get all the way back to the utilities, all the way back to the water main, and increase that pipe size. That gets costly. A lot of permits. City's got to be involved. They may participate, they may not. We did a development with my Elevations Credit Union position in Old Town Fort Collins, and it's a long, boring story. I won't tire you with that, but it's a mixed-use development. So we have retail on the bottom, office on the second floor. We as a credit union own those first 2 floors as 1 condominium unit, and then it has residential condos on the top 2 floors. And we just sold off that core and shell to another developer. Randy Myers is his name, and he developed 22 condos there. But just going through that, and I'm talking 22 condos in a smaller town like Fort Collins, incredibly expensive. They told me at the city that I broke the record for the most meetings to go through for planning and zoning. Yeah, I was like, well, thanks, I appreciate that. Historic preservation, so everything. I mean, it was it took 5 years. It was a 5-year deal, and that's going to ground up, let alone a conversion where you're, the parking challenges and such. Luckily, we're right next door to a parking garage.
Sure, and I think that the COVID pandemic that did happen, it spurred a lot of these conversations around the conversions, right? You have a lot of empty office spaces that are sitting underutilized and not being used right now. And so naturally, as real estate professionals look to develop some of these spaces, you're going to run up against some issues that may not have been sorted out yet, just because there's never been a need for those. But this article goes on to say that, Colorado is looking to, incentivize some of these developers with tax credits. So, they are looking to kind of help these conversions happen, which is great.
Yeah, so they're talking about up to $5 million a year. I'm not sure if that's per project or overall. Hopefully per project, because I think the incentives would have to be a solid, 10 or 15% easily, depending on the project and what you're up against. And I always look at, look at it as, what's my exit strategy? So as a developer or an investor, okay, we go in, we get the tax break. How long does it last? And after it's done in 5 years, and we want to exit, what's the building worth? And do those tax credits go away? And is that going to be a detriment to getting out of there? So you got to kind of look at that whole big picture.
I just have to say my favorite thing is that we're not ripping these buildings down. We're able to go in there and reactivate that space and kind of bring a little bit of life into the neighborhood of somewhere that has a building that's historic or has been around for quite some time, and we're not just tearing these things down. I think it saves a little bit of character and kind of adds to the dynamic of the neighborhood.
Yeah, I like that historic aspect too, because that's a draw. People like to live in these type of buildings, so that you kind of start insulating yourself from some of the problems and some of the economy by having something like that. I mean, I have this vision of these high rises that are empty. I know one sold in St. Louis. I think the tallest building in St. Louis just sold for like a tenth of what it was originally sold for 10 years ago. I think Goldman Sachs bought it. I have this vision of, you have residential on the top, and then there's a gym, and there's office space in the middle, maybe there's a gym and a grocery store on the bottom, and so you could just have this whole community vertically, and that's a way that people can live and work and get out and not have to do that commute.
Yeah.
Because the biggest advantage I found out of COVID was I can now work from home about 3 days a week, and I'm not spending, because my office is technically in Broomfield, so it's an hour each way. A couple hours a day adds up pretty quick.
Yeah. Well, it's tough too, because with such high costs to convert these spaces, it's really hard to make those deals work without these incentives that are being offered by the state.
Yeah, and it adds to affordability issues. So it's kind of two separate things. Doing affordable housing and low income versus these luxury conversions to keep the downtown vitalized. So.
Yeah, and we were actually just discussing the other day some of those new high rises in the Rhino district, just north of the Denver downtown area, where they put in the X building, which does the rent by the room, and also that what is it called, One North, the one where they put the forest in the middle of it as well too. So you're seeing some interesting new construction things, and I think we even just looked at the math too. I think in a normal year, about 3,000 to 5,000 new projects come on every year in Colorado, and I think this year we hit about 25,000 new projects just came on. So that's huge and affects the market in so many different ways, because Aaron himself has several rent by the rooms here in Denver, also in Kentucky and Florida as well. So these strategies of increasing the density of the buildings that are here, I love that idea, almost more so than just building brand new ones, from scratch. So I think that these kind of incentives, that the city and the government is offering are huge, because at the end of the day, you've got to do the math, and if the math doesn't math, then, we're not doing anything. So the fact that, we were even talking about, all the utilities that have to go into this, and, widening the pipes, and, getting all kinds of, permission and permitting from the city. So, this 5 million goes away real quick, when we're talking about, some of these larger projects. So it's nice to see that they're at least trying, to get back, because there's not a clear slution really for any of this. But, if some of us, creative folk and, the people who are in this space and get together and have some of these creative ideas, it warms my heart, because these deals are the ones that I want to be doing as well too. That's giving back to the community, not just, we were talking to a lady in a coffee shop the other day, and she really liked our projects, because They weren't just gentrifying the areas. They weren't just turning it into, bougie areas where, you're pricing out, some of this, the workforce that really supports the city. So anyways, I digress, but this was a great article for sure.
No, it's super important. I think, the vacancy in office, you think, oh, well, people aren't going to work. But okay, what about the pizza place on the corner or the coffee shop downstairs? Nobody's there anymore. So that infrastructure is there. So if you can overcome some of these like utilities and plumbing and stuff we talked about, you're really holding that neighborhood together and supporting all those other businesses as well. So it's definitely better than just building new in a green field somewhere isolated. You have to go through putting in roads and everything else. So I like that approach as well.
Yep. All right, let's jump right into our last article here. Share the new tab. Can we see that one?
Yes.
All right. Colorado's housing market may be investable as price cut rate just hits 42%, suggests market executive. Aaron, why don't you dive into this one? Tell us what's going on here.
Yeah, this is a fun article, right? Because it starts the wheels turning in your head, if you will. I've seen Denver listed on a couple of top 10 lists, saying the same thing, right? We went on this incredible run based off this COVID market. Which, if you've been in real estate long enough, you have an understanding that wasn't a realistic or healthy market at all. It was great for people who had properties or were getting their foot on the ladder, and it was great to see those values increase, but it wasn't a realistic market, right? And I think as we start to see some of those, things fade out, and with these rates still not dropping quite as much as what the first time buyer wants to see, we're seeing a lot of inventory sit on the market longer than we have. We are still having people move to Denver, but it's just not enough to soak up the extra inventory. So I think that's why we're talking about this.
Yeah, I like these headlines. The price cut rate hits 42%. Yeah, it's not cutting the prices 42%. It's 42% of the deals are selling below asking, is what it's basically saying.
Yes.
Which is fairly balanced, it sounds like to me. That's kind of been typical since I've been around anyway. Like you said, that last kind of bubble, I timed it well just by accident. I mean, it wasn't like I had some great insight, but I bought this house that I'm sitting in right now. We sold our house. We got top dollar. It was still 3% interest rate, so we were able to buy more house. But the long story there is I offered asking price, and we lost out. We didn't get this house, and a few weeks later, I had like 7 offers. It fell through. Agent calls me back, and I offered 10,000 more. I was like, I'll do 10,000 more. I'm a real estate guy. I negotiate. I can't go over price. Come on.
Yeah.
It's just an ego thing. So jumped in, got it, and then over the next year, so it went up 30% in about a year and a half, 2 years. And you start looking at the other sales in the neighborhood, they're going 70, 80,000 over. So now I'm really proud of paying 10,000 over. I go around bragging about it.
Sure.
It's crazy what it was doing at the time. So now it's just kind of correcting a little bit.
Yeah, and I think you point out a really great point. It's some of these articles that we put on here are very catchy. They're very what's the word, clickbait. But I think that's a great thing to point out. It's not that home prices are dropping 42%. It's 42% of all deals are going for below list, and which I think it's somewhere in the 5% range. Depending on where you're standing. The article was on to talk about Colorado Springs and Austin, Texas, and some of these other markets that are seeing the same thing. But I was talking about how the real estate economy sits on like a tripod, if you will. You've got interest rates, you've got jobs, and you've got inventory, right? Mm-hmm. So interest rates are kind of at all-time highs currently, and they're fluctuating. I think even today, as we sit here Wednesday, I think the Fed is even deciding to cut or raise, and we'll see how that pans out. But like Mike pointed out too, our job market is still strong, and the only thing we're really seeing is the inventory is going up, but we're also seeing less buyers than ever. So these homes are sitting on the market a little bit longer and having that sort of correction, that you mentioned earlier, because it's not like a full dip, and I don't see it, dramatically even dropping, maybe 10%. I mean, we can look back at 2008 and see that 10% drop, but I mean, even the Boulder area still appreciated 1% because of the inventory. There's just not enough available. And I know that, I just talked about some of these units coming online. We had 25,000 this year, and yes, that is affecting things. But really the biggest point is that you have just so much money and so much people sitting on the sidelines waiting for this market to drop, when I think it's more of like a educational standpoint, is these people need to understand that if those interest rates do drop, the home prices will go back up. So it's this juggle of back and forth. And I always make the joke, don't wait to buy real estate, buy real estate and wait. But yeah. Other than that, that's just a kitschy line, if you will. It's one of the same as one of the mortgage brokers, don't what date the rate, and marry the house. Is that the other one too? All these silly kitschy lines. But there are a lot of truth to them, especially once you unpack them and start getting educated about what's really going on and stop listening to these clickbait, titles. And because it's really tough, especially when we talk about residential, it's not necessarily an investment, especially if you do have an interest rate, even at 4%, if you bought a $500,000 house, you're going to pay roughly $400,000 back to the bank just in interest. So especially, when I'm talking to first-time home buyers, I always explain to them, how you want to pay, if you can, one more month a year, to really cut, that interest down. But anyways,
8 years comes off.
What's that?
8 years comes off if you do that every year.
Yep, you got it. So, I mean, just with these simple understandings and just a little bit more education, and stop, with the fear of, oh no, I always explain to people, just make sure your job is still there, like get the house you want, just make sure you can pay that monthly payment and everything will be fine. But these clickbait titles, get a little interesting. So I'm glad that we can have at least like a little bit of an expert discussion, and maybe if somebody watches this, they can, start to understand maybe a little bit more about the market. Because I mean, even for us as professionals and experts, it's hard to juggle all these moving pieces.
Sure. I'm of the state of mind where I think the one benefit that it has right now is it's taken the frenzy out of the buyer's side of it. There was just this frenzy of like they have to get the house, and if you're not educated, like you said, Mike, where you put in an offer at ask and you sit there and wait, then you had these people that were offering 30, 40, 50 over ask, and it just created this frenzy of like they have to get their foot in a house. And you're absolutely right, Barney. It will tick back up as soon as these rates come down. So I think we're all on the same page with saying that it's all about education and how this market moves.
Yeah, really. We see more because we talk to more people about prices and such. It doesn't move as fast as the headlines act like it does. That's just emotional. Mm-hmm. Like the emotions swing, sure. But for instance, I was looking at some personal investment and talking to various sellers of like 12-unit multifamily in Salt Lake City I was talking to. She was all in on the owner financing because I said, look, exactly what you just explained. I can pay $400,000 to the bank, or I can pay it to you. Which one do you want? I'd rather pay it to you. I can pay them 6-7%, whatever it was at the time. She wanted 4%, and she's retiring. That's her income in addition to Social Security and the lump sum down payment. We ended up not making a deal. Somebody came in and way overpaid. Like if they're looking at it as an investment, and maybe they just want the tax write-off. I don't know the full situation, but if it's anything other than that, they are going to be in trouble because that cash flow is not going to cover that debt. So.
Yeah, and you bring up another really great point about seller financing. I mean, I feel like with just a little education, like first-time home buyers could get into some pretty sweet deals. Just a quick example. I know we talked about our friend and partner earlier, Eric Bonick, who is in the Space Force, but I just helped him acquire a fourplex in Federal Heights down here in Denver, and we actually negotiated a 3% interest rates with it. I think it was the 6-year balloon, but essentially with just owner financing and just a little bit of money down, and she was happy, to get out and just keep receiving that monthly payment. So I feel like these questions, can be asked, to the owners, whether we're talking about, with creative financing, with seller financing, or even maybe some assumable mortgages as well, too, people who had lower interest rates. So with just a little bit more knowledge, people can understand that this market will really open up for them. But great.
Yeah, a lot of the banks, just as especially commercial a lot of exposure. Certain banks are overexposed to office, for instance, and so their regulators are coming down on them. They don't want to loan anything at any rate. They just want they want those drawn off the books. So it's this creative. How can we structure this capital stack to make it work for everybody? And it doesn't always have to be the bank. I mean, I'm working at a credit union, and I'm still, I'm like, there are better deals out there. There are life insurance companies that have to invest somewhere. There are all these different, aspects where you can just raise capital and do it as a convertible debt, for instance. That
Sure.
people can put their money in. I have some. It's not convertible debt. I have a note on a self-storage facility in Florida right now. Just my wife and I just put some money in there. We're getting 20% interest. They just needed the cash to do some capital improvement. They bought it for a song. They had some hurricane damage. These are just friends of mine that are investors. Build it back up. They're going to have a $3 to $5 million, probably a $3.5, $4 million lift on that. So they were like, sure, we'll pay you 20%. Here, I get that back in November, just with a flat 20% on top. So
Right.
those things are out there, but your typical, home buyer, for instance, is not going to get that creative. It takes, like you said, some education.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we're just about at the 40-minute mark here. And I want to thank you, Mike, for coming on. I appreciate all your insights and all your expertise and your professionalism up there in Fort Collins. And hopefully we'll get you out to the barbecue next month. But thanks to Aaron as well, too. Appreciate you being on here. And everybody watching, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and comment down below. Do you agree with us? Do you have any questions? Make sure to ask us, because we're definitely happy to answer. And thanks again, guys. Appreciate you being on here. And we'll see you on the next one.